Hello and welcome. My name's George and my channel is all about helping you get the most out of Logic Pro so that you can record and produce your best music in your home studio. Today we're going to be looking at the keyboard player, session player, and doing a deep dive in all the features and controls that are available to you with this new session player. I'm going to show you how you can go about tweaking it to make it fit with your own song. So let's dive in. So for starters, I have a project pulled up here, which actually already had a piano part recorded in, but I'm just going to mute that for now and see how the Logic session player compares. So I've already inputted my chords in my chord track up here, which is what the session player is going to follow. And if you want to learn more about the chord track, I have a dedicated video on that I'll link to that you can check out. So let's go ahead and load the keyboard player in. So we'll just go up here to the plus button. And under session player, we'll select keyboard player. And you'll see that created a region right here. And I'm just going to go ahead and move that to our second verse over here, and we'll start working from there. So one of the first things we can do is resize this. So I want it to cover my entire verse here. So if I just click and drag from the bottom, I can resize that, and you'll see the notes will just repopulate depending on the size of the region. Now, one of the first things we can look at is the different keyboard player styles. So if you go down here, you'll see it currently says freely. And as the name suggests, the keyboard player is going to play a little bit freely. So let's hear what that sounds like. So a lot of fills and not just strictly chords, and just kind of filling out some things melodically. But if we click on here, then we'll see all the other styles that we have. So let's check out the broken chords. And that sounds like this.
Wanted you before I ever met you. I knew that you come knocking at the door. The hardest part of love is when you're lover. Hear your heart beating on the floor.
So in this case, you can hear and you can kind of see actually what's happening, kind of two notes, one note, two notes, one note. So that chord being broken into just kind of a rocking pattern. Let's check out the next one, which is block chords. So this is going to be more kind of just steady chords happening.
Wanted you before I ever met you. I knew that you come knocking at the door. The hardest part of love is when you're lover. Hear your heart beating on the floor.
All right, and then next up we have arpeggiated, and that sounds like this.
Wanted you before I ever met you. I knew that you come knocking at the door. The hardest part of love is when you're lover. Hear your heart beating on the floor. Wanted you.
So that just takes the chord and makes it single notes and running through each note one at a time. And then lastly, we have the simple pad. And when we switch to this, this is going to switch to a different instrument. So now it's going to switch to the retro synth here. And this is more just held chords, kind of more of an atmospheric type thing. So that sounds like this.
Wanted you before I ever met you.
So a little bit different than the rest of the keyboard player styles we looked at. So I'm going to go back to the freely style. And before we look at customizing it all in here, I'll just quickly mention some of the presets that we have available to us here. So right now it's set to this Sweet Memories, but we have all these different presets available to us that we can check out and kind of use as a starting place. So for example, let's just check out this gentle ballad real quick and see what that sounds like.
Wanted you before I ever met you. Knew that you come knocking at the door. The hardest part of love is when you're lover. Leave your heart a beating on the floor.
Okay, so that's not bad. That's maybe actually the closest thing that I like so far. But let's dive in here and change some of these so that we can customize it exactly to what we want. So the first thing is these complexity and intensity. So complexity is obviously going to be kind of how busy the player is. So if we bring that all the way up, you'll see this repopulate and we have a lot more notes on the screen.
Wanted you before I ever met you. Knew that you.
So for this particular song, I'm gonna bring this kind of back to where it was a little bit, and maybe even a little bit less, and just have it nice and simple in the verse. And then the intensity, this is going to relate to volume. So it's going to be how hard the keyboard player is playing the keys. So we bring this up. You can see how these all got a little bit thicker, and it's going to sound like the keyboard player is playing the keys quite a bit harder.
Wanted you before I ever met you. Knew that you.
Now, again, that doesn't really fit with this song, so I'm going to dial that back again, make it a little bit softer.
Wanted you before I ever met you. Knew that you come knocking at the door.
Okay, great. Now let's move over here, and we kind of have a section for the left hand and a section for the right hand. And for starters, we can actually decide to turn on or off either the left hand or the right hand completely. So here, the left hand, if I click on that, you'll see that grays out, and you notice some notes disappear there. And if I do the same with the right, then everything disappears. So if you just want a left hand part or just a right hand part, you can do that. And then next we have these sliders down here, and these relate to the range in which these hands are playing in. So if we just want the left hand to play very low notes, we can bring that down.
Wanted you before I ever met you.
And you can hear those deep bass notes, right? And similarly, in the right hand, if we bring this all the way up, that's going to be in the higher register now.
Wanted you before I ever met you.
So you might decide to change this depending on the section of the song we're in. So since we're in the verse, I'm going to bring these down a little bit.
Wanted you before I ever met you. I knew that you come knocking at the door.
Okay, great. So now we can look a little bit at the voicings here. And when we talk about voicings, that just means the notes that we're incorporating in the chords. So for example, in the left hand, you can choose the root and octave, root and fifth, or root, fifth, and octave. So right now we're in the key is C. So C is the root, the bass note. The octave would also be a C, just an octave higher. and the fifth would be a G, so the fifth note in the scale. So we're starting from C, C, D, E, F, G, G being the fifth. I'm just going to stick with the root and octave in the bass to keep that kind of nice and clean. And then style, this will relate a little bit to the complexity. So if you just want held sustained notes or kind of a simple pattern, more complex, or you can choose to follow the right hand, which will make it a little bit more melodic in the left, or some steady eighth notes, which will be a bit more rhythmic. I'm going to stick with simple here. Now we can also adjust the voicings in the right hand. So we can go 2 voices, so 2 notes for the chord, 3 voices, 3 notes for the chord, full chord, and 4 or more voice. Now for the common tone, that's when it's keeping one note the same between the different chords. So that sounds like this.
Wanted you before I ever met you.
I'm just going to go with full chord here. And then movement, that's going to determine if kind of how much the hand is moving around, right? So I usually like to stick in a minimal range, and that way we're using inversions and not moving around as much. So let's hear what that sounds like now.
Wanted you before I ever met you. I knew that you come knocking at the door.
So you can hear that's all kind of in the same range. And then maybe when we get to the chorus, then we'll open things up a little bit. Now, the next thing we can look at is the chord rhythm. So if we click here, we have some different rhythmic patterns that we can follow along to. So you can see here based on the dots. So these are all, each dot is a 16 note. We're in 4/4 time. So this is beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4. And if we select a different pattern, so that's going to change kind of where the notes fall rhythmically.
Wanted you before I ever met you. I knew that you come knocking at the door.
So we have 6 different patterns that we can check out. And at the bottom here, we want the rhythm to follow the chords from our chord track up here. But what we can also do is here where it says track is we can get it to follow the rhythm of a different track. So for example, I can tell it to follow my bass. And then now that's more closely going to follow the rhythm of some of the other tracks I already have in my session. And rhythmically, the bass is probably going to be the closest thing that I want the piano to follow. So now that's going to sound like this.
Wanted you before I ever met you. I knew that you come knocking at the door.
We're getting closer to what I like. And I just want a little bit less busy. So I'm going to turn down the fill amount. So that's going to give us less overall fills. And then maybe the fill complexity I'll bring down a little bit as well. And now let's have a listen to that.
Wanted you before I ever met you. I knew that you come knocking at the door. The hardest part of love is when you're lover. Leave your heart a beating on the floor.
Cool. So that's now getting pretty close to what I like. Swing. If this song was swung, then we could adjust that to kind of swing the notes. But in this case, it's all straight. So I'm just going to bring that back down. We can move over to the details tab. A few other options we have. Grace notes. Those are the quick little notes that you hear in between chords. So for example, probably right here.
The hardest part.
A little twang going into that note. So if we bring this down, we turn that off rather, then you'll see we're not getting that little kind of twangy note going in there.
The hardest part.
But I'm going to bring up the grace notes a little bit. Just get a little bit of that. And then we can adjust the feel. So either pull or pushing the beats. It was sitting pretty well where it is, so I'm just going to leave that. Dynamic, so how soft and loud we want things to get. So if we want a big range in dynamics, we can bring that up. Or if we want very little dynamics, we can bring that down. And then humanize, if we want things to be a little bit looser, well, then we can bring this up. Or if we want it more quantized and a little bit tighter, then we can bring that down. And tempo, if we want the chords to be doubled up, we can go to double time or half time if we want it to be slowed down. And then the last tab we have to look at is the manual tab. And this would be if we wanted to input a manual pattern. So if we go back to the main section here, we have our pattern here, which is currently following the bass. So that's going to override this manual pattern. So for now, let's go ahead and turn that off. And if we go back to manual pattern, then this is where we can write in our own rhythmic pattern. So again, these are all 16th notes. So this is beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4. And if we type in our own rhythmic pattern, then the session player is going to follow that. Now I kind of did something distinct just for demonstrations. That obviously doesn't work all that well. So let's get rid of that. And let's go back and have our track follow our bass once again. Okay, so here's what we've come up with for our verse.
Hardest part of love is when you're lover. Leave your heart a beating on the floor.
Cool. Now let's move on to our chorus. So this is where now we can make a different part, but still using this keyboard. So what I'm going to do is you can either hover over here, the plus button, and that'll create a new region, or you could simply copy this over and that'll make an exact copy of what we did. I just held down Option and dragged. And now when we have this selected, any changes I make here is not going to affect the previous region. So for starters, maybe I'm going to bump up the complexity a little bit, bump up the intensity as well to make it a little bit louder. And maybe let's go ahead and bring the right hand into a higher octave. The movement, we can make it a little bit more. So medium movement, maybe a few more fills. Okay, so just going purely on instinct, let's hear what that sounds like.
As a child, a dream, great adventure. Knew only the limits of my mind. Like a bird that flies towards the sunrise. The stays are falling slowly out of sight.
Let's have a listen to the whole verse going into the chorus now.
Wanted you before I ever met you. I knew that you'd come knocking at the door. The hardest part of love is when you're lover. Leave your heart a beating on the floor. As a child, a dream, great adventure.
All right, so that's not bad. Now, if you're at all curious, I did have a recorded piano part that I played in earlier. So maybe I'll just play that for you and you can make your own judgment if you prefer my playing or the keyboard's playing. So let's go ahead and unmute this. And that sounds like this.
Wanted you before I ever met you. I knew that you'd come knocking at the door. The hardest part of love is when you're lovers. Leave your heart a beating on the floor. As a child, I dreamt of great adventure. Knew only the limits of my mind. Like a bird that flies towards the sunrise. The slaves are falling slowly out of sight.
So let me know in the comments which one you prefer. Now I'm just going to go ahead and mute those again, and let's go back and unmute this. Got a few more things I'd like to show with the keyboard player. Now, if you want to customize your piano part even further, well, you can do that. So we can actually convert this to MIDI, and that'll give us kind of full control over this. So if you right click and go convert to MIDI region, now you'll see this entire part in the piano roll as MIDI. And this will allow us to make any little tweaks that we want. So let's just have a quick listen.
As a child, I dreamt of great adventure.
Maybe I don't like this F all the way up here. So let's just drop that back down.
As a child, I dreamt of great adventure. Knew only the limits of my.
Maybe I want to simplify that fill a little bit. Let's do that.
Knew only the limits of my mind.
And these little notes here, that's what's called a grace note, like we had showed earlier. And same right here.
Like a bird that flies.
So having this converted to MIDI, as you can see, now we can go in and move any of the notes we want. So this is one way you can use a session player to get things close, and then you can really fine tune it later by converting it into MIDI. The other thing we can look at doing is changing the keyboard instrument completely. So by default, when you load in these keyboard players, it loads in the studio piano. So you can simply open that up right here. And of course, you can change any of the pianos that are in the studio piano. So right now it's set to Studio Grand. So if we wanted vintage upright, for example, we could do that. And there's 3 different mics that you can change to adjust the sound you want. So you have customization of the piano sound like that. If you want to take it a step further, you can load in any piano plugin that you own. So for example, if I want to get outside of Logic and perhaps load in Contact, I can load in the Alicia Keys piano, for example. So you can apply this to any keyboard instrument that you own. So I hope that gives you a sense of what's possible with the new keyboard session players. And as you saw, you don't have to rely on the stock loops that it comes up with. You can really tailor it to exactly what you want by getting it to follow instruments that are already in your track, or converting it to MIDI and changing the MIDI like that. And of course, you could even record some parts and combine it with what Logic comes up with as well. If you have any more questions about the keyboard player, please please leave those in the comments below. And if you want to dive deeper and improve your workflow in Logic Pro, don't forget to download my Ultimate Logic Pro Starter Pack. This includes my Logic Pro hotkey cheat sheet, my audio recording checklist, my mixing guide, my gear guide, as well as my Logic Pro session templates. I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you in the next one.